Alrighty, so I really wanted to sit down and just, I guess, go through what happened over at Ironman WA and what I learned as a first timer over the Ironman distance. I guess to start with, before we get into how things went, I just want to talk about what my overall goals were. So my first goal was quite lofty and very ambitious. I knew that I needed a perfect day to go under 10 hours, but as someone who's very time driven, I wanted to break that hour barrier because I thought that it was within reach. Now I didn't achieve that, finished in 10 hours and 34 minutes, a time that I'm still really happy with, but that lofty goal was one that I did set pre-race. My other two race objectives were to finish the race strong. So I wanted to make sure that I was running at the end of the race. I didn't want to walk it in, and I'm happy that I was, trudging for most of the run and walking some parts. But for the last 2 and a bit kilometers, I run, under 6 minute pace, and I'm really happy that I was able to do that. So got that one done. And then the third one was I really wanted to finish with a smile. Now it seems quite silly to say that, but I wanted to really be able to look back on my first Ironman race positively, and I thought that being able to get across that finish line and smiling and being happy with whatever the performance was and whatever the day had for me was something that was going to facilitate that happening. So if you have seen the finish shoot video and how I looked, I'll put some photos into this video, and I'll also show a little clip that a friend of mine, Trent, took from behind the finish line. It was just another level. I was so happy to be able to come down that finish line in the way that I did, so definitely achieved that one as well. In terms of what I wanted to be able to do on race day and break things down, I was looking at having a swim of under an hour. Now I swam 1 hour and 1 minute. It was 18th in my age group, and I couldn't be happier. Now I am someone who has only swum under 30 minutes in a 70.3 race, so half distance, once. So to be able to swim 101, I'm really happy with. My T1 target was to be under 5 minutes. I was 8:09, quite disappointing. That dropped me back to 28th in the age group. Overall on the bike, I wanted to bike somewhere between 5 hours and 5:20. My actual time was 5 hours 14 minutes. So really happy to have ticked that box as well. My T2 time, I wanted to be in under 3 minutes for that because I'm normally a little bit quicker in transition 2. My actual time there was 5 minutes 54. That one dropped me back to 30th in the age group. So I had stayed the same in the bike and just moved back a little bit further in transition. And then my run target was to run somewhere between 3 hours 30 minutes and 3 hours and 45 minutes. Unfortunately, I only was capable of running 4 hours and 4 minutes on the day, but even with that, I was still able to move up to 27th in the age group. So I guess what we like to do at Endurance Collab is to really break down our race, so give you a little bit of insight into how we do that. This video will go through that as well. So quickly, I guess we'll start with the pre-race warm-up. Pre-race, I was really happy, got really good breakfast in before the race, well and truly before start time. Got down nice and early, sorted out transition, had some issues there, but was able to get all of those fixed. And then in terms of warm-up, I got into my wetsuit not too early because I didn't want to slowly start to increase that core body temperature, but got into the wetsuit fairly early and then jumped in and had a bit of a swim. Swam maybe a couple of 100 meters at a nice leisurely pace, and dropped a couple of fast arm turnover efforts in, and then head back to the beach and settled down. Once I got back up to the beach, I was able to talk to Cole and Tracy, 2 athletes from EC. My coach Pete was there as well, and then a mate of mine, Trent. So just to sort of settle the nerves, eventually, people started to crowd into the starting corral, and Pete sort of gave me a slap on the arse and said, well, you're going to have to get in there sometime and start this thing, mate, so off you go. At which point I just sort of nodded my head and said, peace, see you later, and headed down to the pig pen and set myself up in the sub 1 hour group. So overall, in terms of the morning, I'm pretty happy with how it went. 8 out of 10 there. It's probably one of the highest pre-races I've been able to give myself because normally my warm-ups are pretty shit. Swim, as I said before, 101. Really happy with that. I think that I was definitely capable of swimming under an hour. I did get caught in a little bit of traffic on lap 2, and it's something that I need to improve. I need to improve my ability to identify where there's packs of slow swimmers and being able to navigate around them so that I can keep my pace rather than getting caught up in the middle of it and then having to really slowly dodge people. It probably cost me a couple of minutes. That's okay. I'm not necessarily too fussed on that. Overall swim, I think 9 out of 10 for the day. The point off literally because I'm not great at swimming through traffic. So I think that's where some improvements could lay there. We'll skip transitions, I'll group them together. I'll put the bike in next. So the bike, overall pretty happy. First lap I rode 35.7 k's an hour and was pretty close to my power target. I think I was only maybe 1 watt normalized power over what the power target was for that first lap. So that was a 2:31. So pretty happy with lap 1. Lap 2 is where it all turned to shit. The special needs bag that I picked up, my nutrition had obviously been sitting out in the sun. The hot drink didn't necessarily sit well in the stomach and I vomited most of lap 2. So I was only able to average 33.1 k's an hour on lap 2. My power was way down and my time obviously as well because I was at 2:43. So the bike, I stayed as focused as I could, but in all honesty, like with the vomiting and not feeling great, it did definitely mess with my head a little bit, and I think that contributed to a little bit of that power drop off, and it's something that I need to develop, is the ability to just sort of keep going with that one. Bike, 7 out of 10, fairly happy with it. Moving on to the run. I come out of transition way too hot. I was running with what I like to call the handbrake on. I wasn't freely moving. I was trying to run a little bit limited so that I could save a little bit for later on in the race, because I'd been warned by basically every single person that has done an Ironman, you will feel amazing when you get off the bike and you will run way too fast. I did that and paid for it in the back end. So we looked at 2 different power metrics that I could use on the bike. So I could use either the power metric from my stride power meter on my foot, or I could use my heart rate metric as a backup. Now I chose to prioritize the heart rate metric because on that first 10 Ks I run within the heart rate target, but it was over the power target. What I should have done is stuck to power, stayed at the 200 watt limit that we'd set for the day rather than letting that creep over, and then let my heart rate actually sit a little bit lower, and that potentially might have been a little bit quicker in the back end of the race. So I guess the run, a fair bit of improvement that needs to happen there, but basically looking at a 6 out of 10 for that one. Now my transitions were very poor. I made some decisions pre-race that I wanted to prioritize comfort in my first Ironman to try and make it so that I'd enjoy the day as much as I could. So I wore a pair of jammers under my wetsuit and then got completely changed into a Rafa skin, like speed skin thing for the bike. This decision wasn't necessarily a great one because it was very difficult to put the skin on in transition. That meant that I basically got stuck and it took quite some time to get changed. That's where most of that time dropped in the transition itself. But I think that moving forward, not getting changed as often would facilitate faster transitions. The other thing that probably slowed my transition down was I did choose to wear some Injinji toe socks. Now I think that actually facilitated a better run, but obviously they do take a little bit more time to put on, and I'm okay with that. But overall, transitions very poor. 4. Race nutrition, throughout pretty much the whole day, the race nutrition was perfect apart from that one bottle that was a little bit spoiled. So I love my Tailwind products. I've tested them extensively. I know they sit really well in my stomach, but obviously the extra warmth in that bottle really made something not sit well. So unfortunately, that was the cause probably of the poor bike performance on the second lap. So I probably just need to spend a little bit of extra time testing some of those things. Now I had tested that nutrition on a really hot day where the bottle heated up on the bike and it sat okay. I tested it by leaving a bottle outside and getting it really hot and then doing some exercise and drinking it, and it sat okay. But on reflection, what I had actually done was I tested the lemon lime flavor outside and I was using the raspberry flavor as my special needs bag. So with the raspberry one having the caffeine in it, maybe that had part of, it's obviously a slightly different formula. So I need to be quite studious about which product I'm testing in which condition so that I can make sure that everything's okay. So a 6 for race nutrition, purely down to the fact that I probably didn't do my due diligence before the race and didn't test things well enough. Race plan I think was great. I swum the swum exactly the way we wanted to, apart from getting caught in a little bit of traffic, which is something that I can improve on. The bike, I stuck to the power plan on lap 1. Lap 2, everything sort of fell apart a little bit. And then my power plan for the run, I think, would have actually been really good had I stuck to it. So overall, I think the race plan was an 8, but the execution, which I've already taken points off elsewhere, was a little bit poor. In terms of equipment choices, we debated one particular piece of equipment right up until race day, and when the bike went in, or the helmet, I actually got to choose that morning, and it was whether or not to wear an Aero Road helmet or a TT helmet. So over the course of the previous couple of days in Busselton, it had been quite cool, so we did choose to wear a TT helmet, which I think was a great choice for the day. But overall, wetsuit was fantastic. It did rub a little bit, but I think that's purely down to the fact that I was stupid enough not to put body glide on. Again, just nervous energy, and forgot to go through my normal steps that I would do every other race morning. Bike was great. Bike felt amazing. The position was terrific. Having the disc wheel on the back obviously helped with aerodynamics. Using the TT helmet was fantastic. The kit that I wore on the bike was great. It just wasn't good to put on. And then on the run, my Mizuno Shadows were fantastic. Absolutely love running in those things. The socks I chose were good because I didn't get any blisters between my toes, which I do if I don't wear toe socks. And apart from that, I think everything else equipment-wise was great. The one thing that I would say, and this is why I'm not giving myself a 10, I'm only getting an 8 out of 10 for equipment, is purely down to the fact that I got changed twice, once in T1 and once in T2. Yes, I was more comfortable, but I think obviously if I can reduce that down and not get changed and wear the same kit throughout, obviously it'll save me a little bit of time, and that's an equipment choice. In terms of concentration throughout the race, I think that I concentrated on my stroke really well in the swim. On the bike, I was very diligent with my power plan on lap 1. Lap 2, everything fell apart, but I'm not going to mark myself down for concentration there because I still really tried to apply myself, and obviously I could have dropped right back into like the 20s in terms of Ks per hour and really coasted in while I was feeling unwell, but I still tried to push as hard as I could, so I think that was quite good. My concentration on the start of the run was quite poor. I definitely run way too fast, and I think that caused my run split to be a lot slower than it needed to be, so an 8 out of 10 there. In terms of enjoyment, this was one of the biggest goals that I had for the race, was to enjoy the whole thing. The piece of advice I got from Cole Smith, one of the other endurance collab athletes that was racing on the day, was to sort of take some snapshots throughout the day, because even though it's going to be a long day, it'll be over before you know it. So I really did sit back in parts of the swim and start to think about what I was seeing and how my stroke was going and what I was feeling, and I was feeling great, and it was awesome. And I remember actually turning for home, or turning to do the long stretch up before you turn in to come into the beach, and I thought, holy shit, I'm actually enjoying this swim, this is a lot of fun. And that was even knowing that I still had like 9 hours to go. But enjoyment wise, I really did enjoy the day, even though obviously vomiting is not necessarily too much fun. I do feel like I got the full Ironman experience, and that finish shoot is just something that you can't describe. I think that the little video that Trent took that shows the emotion that come out, and I'll put a couple of the snapshots in that Finisher Pics got for me down that finish shoot, I think they show exactly what I was feeling. It was really, really cool, and I think enjoyment wise, really great. So 9 out of 10 there. Overall, that gives me 73 out of 100, which is a fairly good score. I do normally rate myself quite hard, and a lot of my races I find with my ratings that I come through are normally in the 60s. So to have a 70 plus event, I think is really, really good, and that sums up my whole Ironman experience really. So a couple of little extra notes. The 3 things that I'm really happy about with my race is my swim. It's probably, I think, my best ever race swim, bar none. I don't think I've had a better swim in a race ever. The equipment choices we made, I think, were really, really good, and that was what made my day as comfortable and as happy as it was. And then I really set out to run that last part of the run well and finish quite strong, and I think I did that, so I'm super happy with that part as well. The 3 things I want to improve for my race, I think the number 1 thing that needs to change is my transitions. Obviously there's a fair bit of time that I can save there just by making a couple of different equipment choices. Number 2, I would make sure that I've tested my nutrition extensively. Now, I felt that I had done that, but obviously I did make one little critical error, which made things not really sit quite well on the bike. And then the third thing that I want to improve on is probably my concentration and potentially a little bit of my discomfort tolerance on the run. So really working to back that first part of the run off and then hopefully extend that slower pace longer into the race so that I don't have as much walking. But overall, really happy. Race highlights. I guess it's the same sort of stuff. Like, first things first, my swim was amazing. But the main highlight is that finish line. So I have never had a finish line experience like that. And I'm not just talking about the fact that it was an Ironman and it's different, because it is so much different to a 70.3 race. But the fact that I actually was able to come down a finish line and be happy and not thinking about, oh, I could have run faster. And because I do place such a high emphasis on running well in my races, I think that by running how I did and still being able to feel so happy about the day says to me that there's something special about those 100 meters of red and black carpet. That by all means was definitely the highlight, and anyone who hasn't raced an Ironman before, I think it's something you definitely should look into doing if you're into endurance sport, because you don't get that anywhere else. Third highlight comes straight after the finish line. Basically, as I got across the line, hearing Pete Murray shout out, "Benjamin Hyde, you are an Ironman," it was really cool. Pete Murray obviously is the big announcer down here in Oceania, and it was great to have him there. I remember seeing him a couple of times while I was over in Chattanooga in the States for the 70.3 Worlds in 2017. I saw him in transition and then on the hot corner on the run. Just hearing that Aussie voice, it made that race feel a little bit more like home, so it was really, really cool to have him there as part of my first Ironman experience. Overall, such an amazing day, really, really happy with how it went, and obviously, if you have any questions about what I learnt from the Ironman day, or you want me to break down any of the other parts of the race that you've heard about now in a little bit more detail, feel free to send me a message or write something in the comments below. But yeah, Ironman WA, what an amazing experience.
Look at the smile. 8:34, thanks you, Ironman.